Last week, Nan and I watched this incredible documentary, Summer of Soul, about a Black culture and music festival in Harlem in 1969. Anybody seen this? I think it's on Hulu. Highly recommend it. Occurring over the course of 6 weeks in what is now Marcus Garvey Park, this free-to-all event drew upwards of 300,000 people and featured an unbelievable lineup of musicians. B.B. King, Sly and the Family Stone, gospel singers Mahalia Jackson and Mavis Staples, jazz and Latin jazz greats like Max Roach, Abbey Lincoln, and Mongo Santa Maria, Nina Simone, Motown stars like Gladys Knight and the Temptations' David Ruffin, and of course, Stevie Wonder, who was in the midst of transitioning to a new sound, and whom the film shows playing a solo on a drum set. I mean, this thing was epic, and not just musically. With the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy in fresh memory, and the Black Panthers providing security, the documentary captures this moment of grief, rage, and debate in the Black community about the best strategies to keep pushing for human rights, economic freedoms, and cultural pride. Several former attendees interviewed in the film express awe at how beautiful it was to be with so many people who look like them. One called it the ultimate Black barbecue. The event was history making, or so you would expect. At the time, the mainstream white news media did cover the festival. Participants were asked what they thought of Neil Armstrong's recent moon landing. Some folks referred to the event as the Black Woodstock to link it to the more famous white music festival that took place that very same summer. But unlike Woodstock, the Harlem Cultural Festival was soon forgotten. The event's videographer was unable to interest a single media sponsor in making a documentary out of the 40 hours of footage that he had captured. So when the concerts were over, the stage dismantled and the trash picked up, the media world moved on. The video reels sat in a basement for 50 years. 50 years until the current filmmakers got wind of them. As the documentary's subtitle archly notes, this Summer of Soul occurred when the revolution could not be televised. What counts as history? Whose stories get included? Who gets to decide? As I'm sure I don't need to tell you, these questions are fueling an explosive debate at the very core of our identity as a country right now. As monuments to Confederate generals come down, presidents' names get removed from institutions, as Black and other people of color gain access to tell their side of history through films like Selma and 12 Years a Slave, or journalism like the 1619 Project, as state legislators rush to silence academic theories they don't understand, and school board meetings about how to teach history devolve into physical melees. Really, debate is too genteel a word for it. This is a battle. It's about power. It's about who gets to define our American story. One side is just beginning to introduce a new perspective, to point out an overlooked set of facts. And the other side is finding this very, very threatening. To heck with facts, some on that side are bellowing. What's true is what we say is true. End of sentence. In that sense, we're not unlike Palestine in the time of Jesus. Here are the Roman conquerors distributing coins that proclaim Caesar to be the Son of God and proclaiming the good news, literally the gospel, of his military exploits. Here are the region's Judean elites keeping the population down and enforcing the tax system in order to gain their cut. Here they all are, dividing and conquering as rulers have done in every place and in every age, and crucifying anyone who challenges their right to do so. And here comes the good news, the gospel of Jesus, the true Son of God, as Peter names him in today's passage, before totally missing out on what that means. Here comes Jesus challenging the official narrative and giving voice to history as experienced by oppressed and silenced people. Here he comes telling the rich to give all they own to the poor, healing the downtrodden, offering everyone an inclusive vision for human rights, economic freedom, and cultural pride. Here comes this holy rabbi teaching the beloved community of love and justice as they are divinely manifest in himself. And he knows that when you teach these things, the other side will find it very, very threatening. He knows you have to be prepared to take up your cross, to suffer the backlash, to lose your life in order to save it. In our current battle over American history, I don't believe this passage leaves us Jesus followers with a lot of wriggle room. I believe it calls us to stand for the inclusion of those facts and narratives that the powerful have kept out of our official story. I believe it calls us to participate in a reckoning with our own past in order to forge a more inclusive and honest shared identity. Now, this does not mean we don't have genuine differences of interpretation. It also doesn't mean that we topple one set of flawed heroes only to replace them with another. It's about expanding perspective. It's about giving voice to history as experienced by oppressed and silenced people. And friends, that history does not have to be divisive if we approach it with humility and extend each other grace. In fact, true histories of unity among common people are among the most threatening to the status quo and therefore among the least acknowledged and known. Just as an example, the other day, I came across a New York Times article about a bloody miners' strike in West Virginia that took place 100 years ago this year. Part of a series of so-called mine wars, which pitted exploited laborers against powerful Gilded Age capitalists and their thugs. This Battle of Blair Mountain marked the largest armed labor uprising in US history. And I had never heard of it. Thousands of protesting miners engaged in a 5-day gun battle with a sheriff in the pay of the coal companies and thousands of his volunteers. The sheriff's force hammered the miners with machine guns and homemade bombs dropped from planes. At least 16 people, but possibly many more, were killed before the US Army was called in to restore peace. It was the largest armed insurrection since the Civil War. And here's the thing. Those miners, they were Black and white, new immigrants and longtime Appalachians. They joined together across all kinds of dividing lines that our system uses to keep common people with common interests apart. Sounds like a pretty historical event to me. Yet when it was over, prosecutions and reprisals forced the miners into silence. And West Virginia's coal interests did everything possible to smother accounts of this and other mine wars. They erased them from federal oral histories and kept them out of textbooks. They even sought to strip mine away Blair Mountain, whose one roadside marker and spent shell casings found in the hillsides are the only reminders on site of what had happened there. Only a small group of historians and union workers are fighting to keep this memory alive. They managed to win a 9-year legal battle to register the site with the National Register of Historic Places, thus thwarting the strip mining plan. They've also created a small museum to tell the story of West Virginia's mine wars with not a cent of state funding, I might add. Guess who holds the levers of power in West Virginia? Like David's against the corporate coal Goliaths, they're pushing back on the campaign of power and fear that has left the Battle of Blair Mountain nearly forgotten. Like Jesus and his motley band, they are the ones giving voice to history as experienced by oppressed and silenced people. They are the ones trying to hold our memory of the past in the hope that it can give rise to a better future. They are the ones trying to offer a different answer, a more inclusive answer, dare I say, a more Christian answer to the questions with which we as a nation are wrestling. What counts as history? Whose stories get included? Who gets to decide? Amen.